Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the virtual chapter for May 2024. And as Milton Erickson once said, I am so glad that you've decided to join us this evening for this Zoom meeting. So here we are. And we're getting ready. Karen, it's just around the corner. I'm going to see you like in three dimensions
I
in
know, in person. It's going to be so cool.
2 days at the oh my gosh, see now I can't
Oh,
do
here, I can do it.
it. The HypnoExpo 2024, here in Orlando, May 17th through the 19th, the
So let
weekend.
me say something so I get the camera. Hello, hello, hello. This is what we're talking about.
Yeah,
HypnoExpo 2024. Take it back, Michael.
okay. Yeah, so anyway, the lovely weekend coming up with all these great presentations and things. And then on Monday and Tuesday, I have the pleasure of doing the stress management program once again as well. So there will be that. And gosh, I'm doing a bunch of things this time. And so are you, Karen, are you not?
That's right. I know what I'm doing by heart. So while you look yours up, I'm teasing. I am doing the reverse fractionation technique, which is very cool. Join me for that for a workshop. I believe, you know, hypnosis, in my opinion, is all BS, belief system. And my BS is that my client already comes to me in trance, so I don't have to do anything to get them there. So I am taking the trance that they walk in with. If it's a spider phobia, they got themselves in that trance. I wasn't there when that occurred. So we get them out of that trance and move them into some place where they want to be instead. That's reverse fractionation. I'll be teaching about how to do that. Michael and who else is with us on the panel, Michael?
Sheila Granger.
Oh, and yes, we're doing a panel on jump starting your business. And I have a 1 hour freebie about how to keep track of your clients. If you see clients more than once, it's a great, very cool form that you can gather information about your client. It's a one-sheeter. When you see your client the next time, you look at it and you already know a whole bunch of stuff all about them without having to do a whole lot of refresher work. And when you see a whole lot of clients, that's a really important little asset to have. So those are the things I'll be teaching. What about you, Michael?
Well, I'm doing a 1 hour freebie. In fact, I'm doing a bunch of 1 hour freebies. This one, the first one that I'm thinking of is called Mind Games, and it's neurobics and how to create changes that last, and brain exercises and all those kind of things to keep the machinery firing the way that it should, and to help people to integrate change work that we do. Then I'm doing another one on trying to remember the middle of it. The second one. It's funny. No, no, you just asked me. I do have my handouts. Oh, creating community events to build your practice. So kind of in line with what it is that we're doing with the Jumpstart Your Practice panel as well. And then finally, I'm doing a third one on not evolutionary hypnosis. What is specifically the title of it? Client driven hypnosis and the hypnotic relationship. And that's going to be an afternoon. And again, another 1 hour. Those are all 1 hour freebies. And then, like I said, I've got the post conference for 2 days with the stress management program. So there you go.
In
Busy.
case we didn't mention it, that will be at the IACT IMDHA HypnoExpo that is this weekend in Orlando, Florida. So
Yeah.
it's cool. Going to be a lot of fun. A show of hands of people who are going to be there in our group here. Dennis, I was sure that I would see you in person there. I'm a little disappointed. You're muted if you want to share. That would be a time.
There, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I have a conflict. However, I am signed up for virtual and I will capture everything I can. And it may sit in my file cabinet a while. I may even have to dance back and forth between my previous commitment and this one. We'll see. I'll try to get the best of both.
In his other life, Dennis is also a dentist. and it has other commitments once in a while that sometimes take precedence over, this. But I'm sure that you will get around to it. And I really wasn't taking names to kick butt, but now that I know that you've committed to watching it at some point, we will have a pop quiz for you about the conference coming up in a couple of weeks.
Okay, I'm going to get ready for that.
Well, and by the way, remember if you got the virtual hypnosis, you're going to get a flash drive as well with all of the lectures and handouts from the conference. So you don't want to forget about that. So yeah, we can keep you busy for the next 6 months easily, I'm sure,
That's right.
with some great stuff. Yeah.
So, Michael, you've been going through some changes lately.
Holy man, have I been going through some changes lately. And I'll tell you what, so I mentioned earlier that that I have to move out of my office. I had been in the same office for 25 years, and the building has been sold. And I think, in fact, I even think that they're going to tear the building down, which is quite interesting. And my landlord had told me that they were going to give me 2 months notice, in advance, which would have been great. And as it turned out, the person that they were selling the property to wasn't quite so good with that. So I ended up with like a month and a half just for and oddly enough, the day after my office building closes, after the sale closes, is the day that I have a 4-day weekend in NLP that was going to be meeting there. So I've been scrambling to find us a new venue and to do all the things that you need to do. But here's the thing that's interesting. I mean, the thing that I really want to share with you guys about this is that ever since 1991, imagine, this is a long time ago, ever since 1991, on the first Monday night of every month, I have been doing a program much like this, but a live program in my office that was called First Monday. And so this month, I had to do my last First Monday. And I called it my last First Monday. And while I was getting ready for it, I was sort of sorting through books and papers and things in my office. And one of the things that intrigued me was I first had seen evidence somewhere in a piece of paper that I picked up of a metaphor game that I used to use in training a long time ago to help people develop metaphors. And the instructions to it were really sort of sketchy. In fact, I really just kind of had a reference to it on a piece of paper without any description of the process anymore. And I simply couldn't remember. And I started thinking, oh my God, there's some great technique you can use to help people create metaphors. And that metaphor lady, what's her name? Reese, it's not Marianne.
But it is Reed.
The clean language lady.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Well, anyway, she says that we generate 6 metaphors a minute. And that used to be something that I had a hard time following. I'm like, really, are you sure? Because but when you say something about how, she really got that point across, for example, it's a metaphor, isn't it? That it suggests something moving through space. And the metaphors are hiding in our language all the time. So I started thinking while I'm getting ready for my last First Monday, started thinking about metaphors, and I thought it'd be nice to talk about metaphors and metaphors that were involved with the changing stuff that we were doing, the transition, moving out of my office, and I noticed that there are activities in life. When I was teaching people how to do metaphors, I was always suggesting to them, when somebody presents something to you, it's interesting to think about what would be a good metaphor for that. But I always thought that was one way to do it, and you could collect metaphors through time and get a healthy collection. But the best way to do it seemed to me to be to notice what happened in the world, not, just notice things that happened around you and ask yourself, what would this be a good metaphor for? So I'm driving to my office in my last First Monday evening. And I thought to myself, the universe has been speaking to me. So I'm just going to be open to what's the next metaphor? What's the next metaphor? And I realized that at that particular point, I had firmly committed myself to the turn only lane on the on the road. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute, there's one, that we're in this sort of turn only lane. And this is going to happen. The corner is coming. Changing my address, turning off the internet, all of these various things seem to be interesting kind of metaphors. And and then I was looking through all the books in my library, right? And I really, honest to God, I have got a lot of books. And I've given away like 90% of the books that were in my office just in the last week or so. I mean, people are coming and scooping them up, which is really kind of great because this is a metaphor, isn't it, for legacy. Here's some wisdom, and the people that have been my students and stuff are now carrying that stuff out and taking it home with them because they're at a place where I was a while back when I was first looking at those things. There's audio tapes, cassette tapes. Y'all remember cassette? I actually, honest to God, I really even have some reel-to-reel tapes, of things that I've collected over the years and lectures and things. Now I find out that some of those audio tapes don't play anymore. Then I found a videotape of me doing a training in, I think it was in 1992. And I was like, it was just a part of an NLP training. And I thought, oh my God, I'd like to see that. I'm really curious about, what I was doing in training. So I put it in the VCR. A VCR, honest to God. And actually I got a message back from the machine that said that this mode is not supported. And I'm like, oh my God, what is that a metaphor for? And then finally, while I was going through all the stuff in my office, at the bottom of a drawer in my desk, I came upon this. Oh my gosh, is that going to show?
Yes.
Wisdom of the ages, it says. Now, I don't know what could this be? I said to myself, the wisdom of the ages here in my office. And so I had to take a look inside and I opened it up ever so carefully because, ever so carefully because the wisdom of the ages, right? You wouldn't want it to spill out or something. And I reached inside and came out with floppy disks. Some of see you can't even see them anymore. And nowhere to use them, nowhere to access the wisdom of the ages indeed. So it just amazes me how many metaphors you run across in a process like that. And then it occurs to me that anything that you're really engaged in colors the way that you look at the world around you. And so metaphors are presenting themselves to you all the time, and if you really sort of choose a topic, whether it's a client you're working on or something like that, and watch for it and just ask, this is much more cosmic than I usually get, but just to ask your unconscious mind, I'm going to look at the world today and I hope that you will show me something really interesting that I can use in my work. And well, that's the part of that I wanted to share, Karen.
It's kind of like reinvention.
Kind of like reinvention.
Kind of like reinvention. You reinvent the metaphor, you reinvent yourself, you reinvent your perspective. That's exactly what you're doing. You're reinventing yourself now in a new place because you've had to move locations. And so rather than the Florida man with the office in the certain section of town, you're now the Florida man with an office someplace else. Or, actually, I want to throw this out. Michael helped me reinvent myself a long time ago before the pandemic, luckily enough. You can see my office. I didn't used to have the Adam Lambert blanket on the recliner. That's just for my entertainment now. When I had clients in here, I didn't have the Adam Lambert. It was a nondescript blanket on the recliner. But I saw clients in here all the time. And Michael taught me how to reinvent myself as a hypnotist on Zoom. I had no qualms with being able to hypnotize somebody on the phone or on the internet or via text or anything else, but I didn't know about Zoom. And Michael was the first person in the evolutionary hypnosis days, early on when we met, not that it's still not evolving, but who was teaching a class on doing hypnosis via Zoom. I was very interested, immediately started seeing clients on Zoom. And fortunately, when the pandemic hit, I didn't lose a beat because everybody then moved to Zoom. So we were doing Zoom before it was cool, but there it was. There is kind of the metaphor for moving forward, evolving. Michael called it evolutionary hypnosis. Do you still market an evolutionary hypnosis, Michael, or have we evolved past that?
Yeah, no, I still do because by the way, it's not only about the evolution of hypnosis, but it's about the fact that we are evolutionary creatures, and there is something that lives in us that wants to find expression in the world. And I think that's the stuff that we're really working with when we're working with our clients.
There's something that boggles my mind about hypnotists once in a while when they say, oh, you can't do it there, or you can't do it that way, or you can't do it this way. Wait a minute. What we do is play mind games.
Mhm.
We play mind games with ourselves. We play mind games with each other's. In relationships, we're playing mind games. We're playing mind games all the time. Why would there be a problem with playing a mind game any place? When I first learned regression, I really went all in on some regression work. And I had a friend, I'm in Chicago. I had a friend in San Francisco, and we were on the phone. And I said, I just learned this great thing. And she said, oh, can we try it? I said, absolutely. Thank you for letting me test it out. And we did a great regression with her all the way back to some earlier childhood traumas and worked through them and did it all on the phone. And we did a couple of sessions that way over the phone. Interestingly enough, it was the trainer who taught me this great regression work, who then told me after that, oh, you can't do regression over the phone. Oh, thank God I wasn't given that limiting belief before I found out that you can do it over the phone, right?
Yeah.
And somebody imposes that kind of limiting belief on you, jump right out of their metaphor, jump out of that and into something that works for you.
Yeah.
Because we are limited only by the use of our imagination.
You know, Kara, necessity is the mother of regression. And and 'cause I was at a certain hypnosis conference in a Midwestern city. I won't mention which particular one, but years ago. And in fact, that was the conversation. And somebody had known that I was doing the uh, virtual hypnotist class online. And they said, you know, you can't do hypnosis online because what if, and because what if, and because what if, and because what if, which tells me simply that they didn't know what the answer to the what if question was. They weren't asking the question sincerely, right? Because I would have been able to tell them what if and what if and what if, but it was like they just had a lot of reasons why it couldn't be. And the funny thing is, and I've got to tell you, I was really hesitant to come to this myself at first. Because I really like being in the same room with people. That's just so important to me. And in terms of just my sort of satisfaction, it's the same with training. God, I like to go to lunch with my students and that sort of stuff. So there's, you know, there's a trade-off. But the interesting thing was, while they were telling me you can't do this online, the interesting thing was that a couple of months later, when the COVID curtain fell, all of a sudden they were all wanting to take my class and to find out how can I do hypnosis online, because it's, you know, it's really essential. So you know, I think any of you who aren't doing it, you're really missing an opportunity. And on the other hand, for those of you that are sitting down in a room with human beings and breathing the same air with them, God bless you, because, you know, truly, uh, you know, I really like that myself. And in the best of all possible worlds, we'll be able to just zoom over next time, you know, to beam ourselves over to our therapist's office, and do a little more three-dimensional work.
I certainly don't mind working in person one-on-one and can still do that when the opportunity presents itself. But as you said, necessity is the mother of invention. Before the pandemic and before I knew about Zoom, I had a book that was a seller internationally. And I suddenly found myself with clients in Europe, clients in Australia, people who called me and wanted to do sessions. Well, I could have taken the Tony Robbins approach and said, you have to come to me in order for us to work together. I wasn't quite, I didn't think in my mind that much of a draw. So I wasn't saying you have to come from Australia to see me for 2 hours. Let's figure out how we can do this. Let's do it on the phone. Let's do it via Skype. I never cared for Skype that much, but let's do it. Let's find a way that we can do it. As soon as I look for a path, the path presents itself. You know, I believe you can hypnotize via text. You can hypnotize with motions, gestures. You can hypnotize telepathically sometimes. I'm going to look right at you, Michael, and telepathically tell me what I'm thinking.
I don't like people that can't appreciate Adam Lambert.
Yes, that was it exactly. But you absolutely got a message from me, did you not? Without any words, we got a message. So there are all sorts of ways that we communicate. Communication is always there. So if you can hear somebody, if you can see somebody, if you can interact with somebody, you have that power to persuade, or maybe not the power, the opportunity to persuade, the opportunity to influence, the opportunity to change a path. A friend of mine, just in the last week or so, was pretty hell-bent on thinking that eyes closed, deep level hypnosis is pretty important. And in a conversation that we had, at the end of the conversation over lunch, she said, wow, I think maybe a shift happened. And I said, isn't it interesting that through the course of desultory conversation, hypnosis can occur? A change of mind can occur. It can occur in all sorts of ways if you let it, right? If you let it. So go with the flow. I think our key word is flexibility. We have to be flexible so that we can bounce around, move around with our clients and move on to a different thing. That's what Michael, and thank God he lets me ride his coattails, because I have learned so much going down this path with him opening up my mind to the possibility of what is there. I do want to throw in quickly, because Michael mentioned Clean Language by Judy Reese. This is the book that he was referring to, Clean Language. And it is about metaphor, but it's about using clean language with a client and not imposing your words on them. It is Wendy Sullivan and Judy Reese, by the way, just for your information.
Nice.
So, Michael, where else do you go with this? Where do we go next?
Well, I think actually, as much as I'd love to keep going with it, it's already oh wait, oh no, we've got a few more minutes. Well, so let's talk about clean language for a minute, because some people don't really know what that is, and I think you're right in the sense, and I'm a big deal about this anyway, about not imposing things and keeping your language as clean as possible so that you're not presupposing stuff and putting things into your client's mind that don't really belong there. But the other part of clean language, though, is, let's say that a person says, well, in this job that I'm at now, I just feel like I'm just stuck. Here's an interesting language. And by the way, it's a metaphor, right? I mean, what does that mean when somebody says I'm stuck? Clearly, it's a metaphor. So the clean language model would say, well, what kind of stuck is that stuck? And they say, well, I'm stuck like with glue, with super glue. Okay. And the clean language model would continue to ask their weird questions. They're very weird questions, but it's like, and when you're trying to go forward and you're stuck like super glue, what else is there about that stuck? And you say, well, it seems like there's no escape. So when you're stuck and there's no escape and it's like super glue, what needs to happen next? And the client will say something about, they will give you the metaphor that is a metaphoric solution to the situation that they're working with. They'll talk to you about getting some kind of ice. What is that stuff that you use to tear glue up? Fingernail polish remover, acetone.
Oh, acetone, yeah.
Sure, or something like that. But they'll say, "Oh, I need acetone." So great. So now, instead of using yellow light and or whatever it is that you've been using, why not use some kind of great hypnotic acetone to help them, to get unstuck? And if you can use the acetone and you start to move forward, what will happen next? And this lovely thing unfolds, but it all was put there by the client in the first place. So many of us have decided before we've even met our clients, sometimes we've decided what it is that we're going to do when they get here, because we know what the problem is. But I'll tell you what the problem is: they don't know who the client is. And so we need to be able to choose our solutions in a way that is responsive to that particular client's needs in the way that they think about the situation and want to present it. So if you can find their metaphors and use their metaphors, it'll make all the difference in the world.
I would just like to throw in that I I like to find their metaphors, but I like to let them find their metaphors. So you're stuck and it's like super glue. Wow, if you had something that would dissolve that or unstick it or let you move, what might you use? Rather than me saying, how about let's throw some acetone on it, because that might not be what they're thinking. Not that that's what Michael was implying, but what might you use? And they'll come up with their own thing. I would use I would use a hair dryer and melt it. Great, let's bring that hair dryer in.
Yeah.
Because it's in their head. Let their pictures work for them. They've already got the pictures in their head. I don't like to impose, because that's a great way to break rapport. Imposing something on them, they go, no. Wow, what would you use to get rid of that?
You all got clients that have been tied up in knots, for example. Another one, right? This is the language that people use every day. And here's why we don't really realize that there are 6 metaphors in a minute. But if somebody says something about, I was talking to a friend of mine, or no, a salesman called me the other day, and I could tell that they were trying to put one over on me. That's a really interesting collection of words. But what does it actually mean? I mean, we have a certain complex equivalence. We understand it to mean something like, but we don't understand why that exact metaphor, and yet it's one that your client chose. So if you can get them to tell you more about that, whatever it is that they think about that when they're saying it, you're going to have some language to use in your hypnotic work with them that comes from them.
When they come up with it, it really works well, because it's what they already know. It's what they already believe. It's already in there. And it might be dissolving the limiting belief that they already have. Isn't that a great use of hypnotic talent?
Yeah.
Dissolving the trance that they're already in.
Just like acetone.
Just like it. As a matter of fact. And yes, we do keep evolving. And if you don't mind, I'm going to evolve this discussion right on into the main event. Now, I will be honest with you. I did this for purely selfish reasons. It was a couple of years ago, not this last year, but the year before, I think. Gila Zak was doing a presentation on the 2 minds technique. I tried to get to it, and I had someplace else I had to be. I can't remember now why I couldn't get to it, but I couldn't get to it. I went to something else that she did. She's just brilliant. But I really wanted to see this 2 minds technique. And so I figured out a way to finally get the 2 minds technique and to share it with everybody. There's a lot of stuff that she could have talked to us about tonight. We did some arm wrestling, and I think I won. I don't think it exactly went down that way, but it's something like that. And she was coerced, persuaded, or influenced to bring this and share it with us. She's just brilliant. She's just wonderful. I think you're absolutely going to love her. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Considered a hypnotist. Gila Zak, certified hypnotherapist, maintains a full-time practice and is a featured presenter at conferences and various professional and medical associations and organizations. She's an honors graduate at HMI College of Hypnotherapy and a member of their student advisory board. She holds a certificate in advanced handwriting analysis, is a Silva Life System graduate, and enjoys espousing on all things hypnotic. How cool is that? She holds a PhD in the ever mysterious field called life, L-I-F-E. The memory of an imaginary friend she had as a child inspires her to help others tap into their imagination and create the life they desire and deserve. Her passion is teaching individuals and groups about human behavior and the creative ways that we access and harness the subconscious mind to create meaningful change. Now, that really was a lead up to what Gila wanted to share with us today. The gallery stuck in time, speaking of metaphors. But let me tell you something. I'm sure that's great. And if you want that from her, I'm going to put her email in the chat room and go get that. But today we're getting the 2 minds technique, because I know it's just absolutely fabulous. Gila, let me ask you a question first. What actually brought you to hypnosis? What got you here? Not to hear our virtual chapter, but to hypnosis.
Yeah. I'd known about it pretty much my whole life because my grandmother was very eclectic, very, ahead of her time. So we had books on Edgar Cayce and things, and Silva was already kind of a part of my hippie parents' consciousness. But what brought me to it was when my daughter was in grade school and she developed emetophobia, which is the fear of vomiting. And we lived with it for about 1.5 years until I finally took her to a hypnotist. And someone said, have you thought about a hypnotist? I'm like, I thought of it for like quitting smoking or past life regression or things like this, but it didn't really occur to me. And I took her and it was just like, it was literally a snap. And I'm like, I'm going to learn this. And so a few more years went by and that's how I'm here. Yeah.
So glad that you are.
Well, thank you.
She's a woman with wonderful energy. I think you're just going to love what you hear. Tell us about the 2 minds technique, please.
Okay, I'm going to set my timer here so I can make sure and do this. Well, I want to thank you all for coming because especially you, Joseph, I feel like a rock star right now. The fact that you're here, I'm just like, whoa, Joseph. So thank you for being here. It means a lot. And to see so many familiar faces, it means a lot for the support. And Karen, you must be as big as Tony Robbins or bigger because I came to you. So there you go. So yeah, the 2 minds technique, I think, is like so many other evolutions of processes and techniques that just come about from what I call hypnoacrobatics. When you are dealing with a client that is not responding the way that we think they should want them to, or an idealized version, and you're trying all these different things because we all know so many different things. And I kind of just came to this on accident. I love, when Melissa Tier says, we're all just making this shit up. And it's true. Hypnosis has been around since the beginning of time, and there's different trainers and different approaches and different things. We have to give it a name, right? When it came time for me to give this a name, I'm like, what am I going to call it? Because it's little bits and pieces of things here and there, a la Gila. And so I asked my subconscious mind, thanks to Tracy Maysmith, she's the one who said, you know what, you should teach this. She came to my very first 50-minute just introduction at HypnoThoughts a couple of years ago. And I crammed a lot in that 50 minutes, didn't I? It was basically, I just did this quick little overview and I said, the best way to do is just to do a demo. And so at any rate, she encouraged me to do it. So I went to sleep at night and I told my subconscious mind, I do a lot of dream therapy work and subconscious programming. So I lay there and I told my subconscious mind, I kind of went through the process and I said, I need to have a name for this. And I woke up the next morning and it was literally the next morning. And I opened my eyes and the first thing that came out of my mouth was 2 minds technique. Just flew out. And I have a great graphic designer. She made me a beautiful hip logo for it. And so it makes it easy to brand this thing, but you're going to recognize some of the different bits and pieces from other things you already know. But, essentially some people talk about resistant clients. What do you do with resistant people or resistant clients? And I like to believe that we just haven't found the right approach for that person. We just haven't found the right style that meets them. And one thing I really appreciate about my training at HMI is they're very, very focused on understanding the hypnotic personality of who you're dealing with. Because not everybody responds to direct suggestion. Not everybody responds to inferential suggestion. And some people, when we're lucky and we get those somnambulists, that are equal parts, then we can go either way with it. But when we think of the intellectual suggestible that really responds more to inference, for them, they have this innate fear of losing control of their mind, their body, their environment, and they're usually living in their heads and they're over processing, they are intellectualizing, they're perseverating and ruminating. And so they're kind of living in this space because they're afraid to lose control. And then if you go to the person who's really a direct suggestible, what in my language, we would call a physical suggestible, they really want to exert control. They want to feel really dominant. So they might not respond to direct suggestion, even though we might think they would, because they want to be the ones in control. So you can be dealing with a client and they are either afraid of losing control to the hypnotist, or they want to unconsciously be in control. And so what do we do with these people? How do we work with them? And so that's kind of how the 2 minds technique came to be. And I was in biofeedback for about 5 years before I became a hypnotist. And it was for relaxation training, stress management, muscle re-education. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of the SKIO, but it was one of the biofeedback devices that was around. Now there's a plethora of them, but at any rate, this is what introduced me into how the brain processes. And I'm not a brain expert by any stretch of the imagination. I like to say I know enough to be dangerous or annoying about a lot of different subjects. But so understanding how the brain worked when I came in as a hypnotist, it was just that much more intriguing and interesting to me how this works. And so this process was kind of born out of necessity. I will also say that we used to have a dog, and I'm a firm believer, if you're going to have an 80-pound dog, that dog needs manners. It shouldn't be allowed to jump up on people. It shouldn't be allowed to sniff your butt and go right to somebody's crotch when you don't want them to. It shouldn't be allowed to take your food out of your hand, right? And I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Cesar Millan. Anybody ever heard of Cesar Millan, the dog whisperer? Well, so my husband and I would just watch the show because we love the show. We love Cesar Millan. We like the philosophy, calm but assertive. So Cesar Millan would teach us how to station the dog. So basically the dog has its own space it's supposed to be, and you teach the dog that that is your spot and you're going to stay there until I give you the command to come forward. And Cesar would always do this thing with his hand. He'd go, ch, ch. So I got into the habit of, telling the dog, go, stay. If it tries to get up, ch, nope, you're going to stay right there. So I kind of had this already running in my background. So I'm working with this person. And don't you love those clients that never disclose to you everything? Because I'm sure most of us have disclosure forms, right? And I don't need the full picture. We're not talk therapists. We don't need to go into the minutia of it, but we need to have a sketch, because personally, if I'm surprised, I can deal with it, but I don't want to be surprised. So if I ask you if you've had sexual trauma, yes or no answer, all I need, just give me that. If I ask you this, but sometimes people, for whatever reason, don't want to disclose. So I'm working with this person and we're going through, and I'm trying all these hypnoacrobatics, and it's basically for a medical phobia. She can go in and she can watch a leg getting amputated if it's happening to someone else, but she can't get her blood drawn. She can't have her blood pressure taken. And so we're looking at, just like Michael says, and I 100% agree, we cannot assume how to deal with the client until we get in their energy and we talk to them and then we see the language they use. So, we're using all the different approaches, and she'd come to see me like 5 or 6 times. And I'm thinking, in my mind, I'm thinking, do you really want this change? We looked at everything: resistant benefit, positive intention, as we call it, secondary gain, depending upon your lexicon. And we kind of covered all the bases. And I'm going to tell you, quite frankly, I was getting fucking irritated. Can I say that in this chapter? Is that okay? I should have a sign that says, I'm the swearing hypnotist. But I was just getting so fucking annoyed. I'm like, come on, man. And so I leaned in her ear and I said, you can keep fighting me, but you're going to pay me. So you might as well get something out of it. And she kind of laughed, and that kind of, loosened it a little bit. And incidentally, when I work with clients now, new clients, and once we do the talk here at my desk where I'm sitting, and then we move over to the therapy chair. Once we sit there, I say, you know what? Some people come to me because they want to make change, and maybe they're people pleasers. And as a handwriting analyst, I can see that in their handwriting. And I'll say, I can see that in your handwriting. And other people will come to me because they want to make change, but maybe like, oh shit, now she's going to hypnotize me. I'm going to have to give up those cigarettes. I'm going to have to change my behavior. So they try to fight me. So I tell people, don't try to play along just to please me. Don't try to resist and fight me, because either way, you're going to pay me. So thanks to that one client, I have a completely new line that I use with every other client after that. But at any rate, so we're going through this process, and I finally just said enough with it. And I went very, very paternal with her. And she was a high physical. She should respond to dominant or direct suggestion, but she was wanting to control the situation. So I basically just put in my practice, I touch people with their permission. So I just touched her forehead and I said, you know what, you're going to listen to me, right? Just right here, right here, right here, right here. Roll your eyes up, look right here, right here, right here. And she looks at me. And I said, I'm going to move over to the side and you're going to follow me. And your thinking mind is going to sit right over there and it's not going to fucking move. And so she just looked at me and I went over to the side, and we'll talk about why I chose this side, but I went over to the side and I said, now your thinking mind is going to sit right over there. If you think your thinking mind is a monkey, give it a fucking basket of bananas and a blanket and tell it to sit there and be quiet. It's like a dog. We're going to station that thinking mind right over there. And she did. She turned. I said, now turn your head. She turned her head. And so then I went over to the other side and I sat back down and I used my maternal voice. I'm going to ask permission to speak directly with your subconscious. We're going to use the word Jessica. Jessica's subconscious mind. May I? By this time, she's like, what the fuck is she doing? She's like, thank you. And I always say it's a genuine honor and privilege, because I truly think it is. You know, these people are coming to us with personal and private things. They're feeling really vulnerable. You know, sometimes we can work content free, but other times people are sharing some pretty, I don't know what happened there. Sorry. They're sharing some pretty difficult things. And so we want to be respectful, right? Of acknowledging. I think it just heightens rapport too, to really acknowledge that what we're doing is, in my opinion, a sacred interplay. So at any rate, that's how the two minds technique was born. It was born out of frustration, out of necessity, out of a little awareness of dog training and just hypnoacrobatics. So that's kind of how I got started.
And then tell us more. Tell us how it evolved from there and where you take it and taking it now.
Okay, great. So Tracy, I know you've taken my class, and I don't know if anybody else has sat in on when I did the demo, but essentially it all, like any technique, it should continue to evolve. I think any process worth its salt should always be reevaluated and change as we grow and evolve and we learn new things. But essentially the crux of it is that we're using the submodalities and the way that the brain processes as the core of how we go forward. So in other words, we're using this bilateral input and processing. And so this is why when I'm in session here in person, I'm going to move around the room. I'm going to get up and go to the other side of the chair, depending upon which part, either the thinking mind, the logical, intellectual thinking mind, or if I'm talking to the subconscious creative mind. And so we know a lot about bilateral stimulation, but this process functions on bilateral input. So they're starting to find that the brain, you know, we always talk about being left brain or right brain, more analytical and more creative, but in truth, they're finding that the brain, it's processing speech and analysis at the same time, just differently. So in other words, I have a handout that I can give you if anybody's interested in it, but you know, the right side, the right ear will, as we know, stimulate the left brain. And so it responds more to the sound associated with speech. And then the left ear with the right brain responds more to the sound of music. So I use a lot of music in my hypnosis practice because it's important. And we know that the brain is going to respond creatively to music. And so when we know that the brain is taking in information differently, this is why I'm going to snap on one side or maybe go to the other side and snap there. Or if they're lying there with their eyes closed, I'll reach across and snap. If I'm going to touch, sometimes I will touch. I might be talking in this ear, but I will reach over and touch the opposite shoulder. So the other thing that is important to understand is that we know through integral eye movement therapy, IEMT, we know through EMDR, that we can elicit memories through eye movements, but we also, the theory is that we also encode our memories through eye movements. And so the way that I explain this to clients, and I, you know, depending upon who they are, I give them a little pre-talk about what we're going to do. But if you ever think about it, if you have a memory, and we could practice this right now if you want to, you could all close your eyes for a moment and just elicit a memory, a good memory, one that makes you smile. And we're all hypnotists here, so we all know how to bring in the sound of it. Activate and acclimate all your senses into this good memory. If there's something to taste, taste it. If there's something to feel, feel it. And when you're in this memory, if you could just imagine now that you're watching it in real time, like a little movie of the mind. And notice how your eyes will move around. Because you are retrieving this memory through eye movement. Maybe you are intentionally looking in a particular direction because you want to. But the theory is that this memory exists and is filtered through our imagination based on the eye movements that we use at the time to encode it. So when you're ready, you can just take a deep breath and bring that good feeling into your body and hold it with you for the rest of the evening. And open your eyes when you're ready. So did anybody notice that your eyes either already moved or once I gave the suggestion, they started to move?
That was so cool. Yeah, I noticed a bunch of movement. Show of hands, who noticed the movement? Yeah. Okay. Do you mind if I ask another question? Who
Please
noticed
do.
before she mentioned it? And who noticed it after she mentioned it? I mean, it was happening before, but it didn't really come to my conscious awareness until you mentioned it. That was very cool.
Yeah. And think about, in my presentations, if I do have the option for a slide, it's kind of like you think of when you come upon a situation that's very, very it's really lit with like a car accident, or you see somebody fall in the grocery store. What do? You walk up and you're looking around and you're listening and you're taking in, what are we taking in, like 4 billion bits of information per second, whatever the number is. And so you're taking in subconsciously all this information, but the eyes are looking and activating these different cortices of the brain as a way to process the experience. And so the theory is that the two minds technique helps to reverse engineer that.
Yes.
Right. And so if we're using sound and we're using touch, we can reverse engineer it. And what I love about the two minds technique, because I like to work at the client's pace. I think if we try to push too hard, we break rapport. I've seen demos and at conferences, I've seen other hypnotists, we've had conversations and like, well, this is what you do. And you don't let the client, blah, 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 blah. And that might work for certain things, but the idea is they're going to kind of turn off to you a little bit. So what I find is that I will ask the subconscious mind, is it possible that we can address this issue and clear it by any measure today? And we get ideomotor responses. So they'll say yes or no, maybe. And then if the answer is yes, I say, would it be possible to eliminate 2%? Yes. Then we go up 10%. And we see where it wants to go. And I'm always calibrating and checking in during this process to see, is this where we need to stay today? Because when you're working with somebody, especially somebody who's going through grief or loss, or maybe they've gone through a very difficult experience, but it's making them stronger and they're realizing how empowered they are through this experience. You might not want to completely 100%, change things. You might want to leave some of that as a resource. And Karen, I love that you use BS. I think of you as the queen of BS, right? Belief systems. And
I absolutely love that. I'm going to own it. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to bring you a crown to HypnoThoughts. and this is what the two minds does. It helps change a core belief system that's running a program. And so what I'll do is once we establish the two sides, then I'll tell the client, I'm talking directly to the subconscious mind. And I tell the subconscious mind, I know that you are designed for one thing and one thing only. And that is to learn. And you're designed to learn for one purpose and one purpose only. And that is to protect Michael. Are you not? And then you get the yeah. And then I will say language like, and I know that you can learn things instantly because you've taught Michael the difference between icy cold and fiery hot, have you not? Mm-hmm. You've taught him the difference between sandpaper, rough and silky smooth. Isn't that so? Yeah. And so I will say, I know that you can learn so quickly and update what you know to keep Michael safe. Can you not? Yeah. I like to add in patterns suggesting this progression of time. So I'll say, you subconscious mind, you have taught Michael all of this and more, not just from a need to survive, but from a desire to thrive. And I know that you've used the same energy to teach Michael as an infant how to roll over, and how to push himself up, how to pull himself up, how to stand, how to walk, how to run. And subconscious, does Michael know how to ride a bicycle? And is it possible that he needed training wheels and a safe and steady hand in the beginning? Yeah. And subconscious, were you a little afraid for Michael? Because that's your job, to keep him safe. If from any perceived, and here's the key word, perceived emotional or physical pain. So if it's your job to keep him safe, were you a little nervous? 9 times out of 10, you get yes. When I get the no, I go, that's right, because you are a natural. You are a natural risk taker at things that you know that you can succeed at, right? We have to know this language up front. And so when they say, yeah, I was a little afraid, I go, that's right, subconscious, because you're doing your job. But you see, thinking mind over there, and then I'll have them, thinking mind, it knew that logically, intellectually, with superior judgment and reason, that it was safe, because look at all the other kids riding the bicycle. So all we're going to do is teach Michael today how to ride a bike without training wheels. We're going to take an old belief system that you think he still needs to be safe in the world, but he's grown out of it, just like he doesn't need training wheels anymore. And you know that feeling when the training wheels come off and there's Michael's little legs and feet and they're on the pedals and they're pumping and there's his hands on the handlebars and the wind in his face and he's free. And subconscious, has Michael ever gone down a hill hands free on a bicycle? Look, Ma, no hands. So not only do you not need the training wheels, sometimes you don't even need hands. And so you can layer in these suggestions that we're going to parlay them out for later. And so once we get to that, this is why I love the idea of doing it incrementally, because generally I will start with, we're going to remove this issue 50%. We're just going to take one training wheel off, because you can always lean on that one if you need to, right? And so this infers, okay, I'm going to make some change, but I'm still going to be safe, because we want to support that subconscious mind and trusting us and the process and the change. So that's kind of how I deal with the pattern from the subconscious mind.
Nice. If I can, by the way, I just wanted to point out that in the chat room, Gila, you mentioned a handout, and all kinds of people are very concerned that they won't get it if they don't know how to ask for it. So if they send you an email, that will work. Yeah.
Yep.
So notice, and I want to say this for the recording, because the chat room, of course, doesn't show up on the replay. So Gila is at Quantum G, QUANTUNG at sbcglobal.net. Okay.
You can reach me there. You can also find me at quantumwaveshypnotherapy.com.
Okay, great. Quantumwaveshypnotherapy.com. And those things are right now in the chat room, but of course, that will disappear after this. So if you want to,
let me just say too,
get that.
Check it on YouTube. Check it on YouTube as well. Quantum Waves Hypnotherapy 1527 on YouTube. So all sorts of places to locate it. But to get that handout, that you want the email at SBC Global, right? Okay. And by the way, GILAZAK, Gila Zak. That's the spelling, in case you need. All right. Sorry for the interruption.
Yeah. Were there any other questions in the chat room?
Mostly it was that. In fact, there was one person said, I want to get the handout, and then 3 people said, me too. Yes, 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 yes.
Okay,
and what I knew was, because I'm really good at this myself, I could be sitting in the back of the room fretting about whether I'm going to get the handout and not hear anything else that you had to say. So I wanted to make sure they were covered there.
Wonderful. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And
Thanks for pressing me to the bicycle, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a pretty universal one. And I worked with a gentleman from Mexico the other day, and, he told me his background. I was 99.9% sure there were no training wheels in this man's experience. And so I didn't even ask, I just basically, you get creative with it. And I love the improv, the classes that people do at HypnoThoughts. Our good friend, Kelly, von Heidenkamp, who does the improv. And we have another person that's going to be doing it. I want to say it's Sarah Sieg this year, but I could be incorrect. And it's just, I've never done improv, but I think good hypnotists need to get comfortable with improvising, because you're going to have stuff come up, right? But again, what I love about this is that when I was going to put this out for pre-conference training, I was very, very clear on my videos at HypnoThoughts. Like, this is not going to be for everyone. And I don't blame you, because it's kind of a complicated process. And you can take little bits of it. You can use little pieces. You don't have to do the whole protocol at once, but you'll see that there's lots of different little pieces you could use, or you could use it as standalone. And so I get it that it's, some people might say, well, why is she doing all that? Is it all really necessary? Yes and no, because there's no one or right way to do it, right? We can have these parallel truths that run side by side and intersect.
And you had a beautiful demo of flexibility. I just want to really point this out. As Gila was saying, and is this the way it happened for you? And they say, no, that's right, because this mind was in charge, and because that mind was in charge. Be flexible. The client is always right, because they just don't hire them. And so if they say something that you weren't expecting, you've got to have something to pull out of thin air to say that's right, and give them where that came from, or give them let them know that that's right. Their thinking is okay. It was beautiful.
Every time. I had a wonderful instructor at HMI. She's still there, Elaine Perlis. And she would always say, that's good information. And I'm telling you, I remember looking at her saying, that is the best thing I have ever heard. And I'm going to take that with me. So no matter what the client says, that's good information. And the truth is, it is. It is the truth. It is good information. So if we try to label it as right or wrong, good or bad, we're doing a disservice to the client, to the process, to ourselves. But if it's just information, and I think it has trained me unconsciously to look at everything as information. Everything is feedback.
Well, Gila, you said this earlier that you were talking about resistance at the beginning. I think it's kind of funny because, I really don't push. I'm the hypnotist who does not push. And I don't deal with resistance simply because it isn't there. And I think that there's a question of whether you give them something to resist or not. But if you have a client who is resisting you, that's good information too. That it lets you know that you need to make an adjustment, you need to understand something, that there's something you don't know, but it is a communication after all.
Yeah. And it can be as simple as asking the unconscious mind what it needs.
Mm-hmm.
If I get a no ideomotor response and I say, that's good information. Subconscious, is it possible that you can help me help Michael with what you might need to make this change? Yeah. And sometimes I've heard, his neck's uncomfortable. Can you get a pillow? I'm like, yeah, let's get a pillow. I mean, it can be something like that, or it can be like, this is really hard. Yeah, that's right. It is hard. So, you have to be that empathetic leader that is still giving them the illusion of control. It's the illusion that they're in control of the session, but we're there to guide them. After all, they're coming to us for this change, right? And so once we go through this process, I also will invite the client, I'm always calibrating back and forth. So I will make the change. As I mentioned, I touch clients. So once they have made the first change, then I have learned from some of my stage and street hypnotist friends how effective certain things you can do with your arms and hands can be. And when you're working online, you can still do this. So the idea would be, once we have any increment of change by any measure, then I want to physically anchor that in with somebody. So I will say, okay, subconscious, because I know that you are designed to protect Michael, is it possible that for now and forever, you can protect him safely with 50% less of that old belief? Yeah. Okay. So then we'll take the arm. Okay. I'm going to take his arm. Just let it stay nice and relaxed. And we're just going to anchor in that change. And then we give him a good sleep. We give him a good just a little, nothing, I'm not into being too assertive or aggressive. It's just enough to go, oh, wait, she did something. What did she do? Right? Does it do anything? I don't know, but everything is a suggestion. And I do believe that when we mix it up enough to where the client, wait, what is she doing now? It's either breaking state or it's deepening. It's doing one of the two. And fractionation, we bring them back up a little bit, they're going to pop right back down a little quicker. So just going back and forth. And with the touch, what I will say is, in the beginning, once I'm anchoring the two hemispheres, the two parts of the brain, I'm going to get the client to lock onto the sound of my voice, just as I did with Jessica. You're going to lock onto the sound of my voice. Roll your eyes up under the lids. Right there. That's right there. Lock onto the sound of my voice. And I snap, give a little bit of pressure. And in a moment, I'm going to get up and move to the right. And now if I'm dealing with somebody, depending upon their suggestibility, I might say, and you will follow the sound of my voice, moving the eyes under the lids, tracking the sound of my voice as I move to the right. If it's somebody who I need to be a bit more indirect, you may find that in time you feel safe and comfortable tracking the sound of my voice. And well, basically I'm getting them to move their eyes back and forth and to follow me. And you might notice that your head turns incrementally a time or two to the right. You know, because I was taught if you can get the client, some clients will naturally turn and lean into you, and then some will kind of want to turn away. And so what does that mean? The theory is that if you can get them to lean into you, then they're just that much more anchored and connected to you. And so we'll do this, you know, as we're going back and forth and calibrating. But yeah, I'm losing my train of thought now. I'm going into my own trance.
May I throw something in that
Yes.
right there? Think about if you do any audio work for your clients, if you record things when they are there with you, it may not be as easy, but if you do recordings, imagine how you can use that with your audio tracks, making the voice from one side to the other side, putting it in both ears, dropping one out. I mean, imagine how you can use that kind of anchoring auditorily only, if that's the medium that you're using, if you're recording tapes and putting them out there, adding sound, adding sound effects, adding things like that.
And what we're doing is, in the idea with this protocol, is we're going to identify the core belief running the program. So once we establish both of the two anchoring of the states, left and right, logic, reason, intellect, and superior judgment, you know, belief systems, associations, behaviors, conditioned responses over here. Once we switch it up and separate them, then it's all about identifying that core belief. And so here's where we will remember the most recent time, or go back to the first time you can remember. It may not be the first time, but you know, the familiar language. And then have them go into the submodalities of the feeling. It really activate and acclimate your senses into that feeling. And sometimes feelings come first and then the emotions follow. Sometimes the emotion hits first and then the feeling follows. And so whatever's right for you, just really connect to it. Where does it somatically live in the body? Where do you feel it? Where has it been? You know, and again, clean language, using their language. I make a lot of notes. Where's it been stuck? Where's it been whatever? And once they get it, then I will, you know, that drop through technique that, you know, Melissa Tiers will teach us, like the drop through, what's under that, what's under that. And so once you get to now what's the core belief running that program? And once you get it, that's when you ask permission. Is it possible to change it? They say, yeah. Now roll your eyes up under the lids and lock onto that belief. Just lock onto it. And here's where I'm going to use the eye movements. And before I knew of integral eye movement therapy, I just did a Google search because I was looking up, you know, how eyes encode memories. And so I just thought, well, that makes sense that if the eyes are encoding the memory, then we can just reverse it. But I don't necessarily know how to do that. So I'm a hypnotist. So I'm just going to suggest. And I have a very imaginative, creative mind. So I said, now subconscious, you're going to roll the eyes under the lids, left and right, back and forth, like little windshield wipers. Because I did know a VMDR. So let's just go back and forth like little windshield wipers, back and forth at your own pattern and your own pace. And from time to time, you might pop up to the upper left and zip down to the bottom right, because I want to just make an X. In my mind, I'm thinking if we can X out this issue, if we can cancel it out. So, or you might pop to the upper, you know, and down to the bottom side. Maybe you'll make a figure 8 or an infinity symbol. Maybe it'll be the letter M or W. Maybe it'll be like a little marble on a wheel that swings all the way around and you get this good, like, right? Because my theory is that, and I would say this to the client, because in truth, subconscious, you know better than Michael or myself at what pattern and pace the eyes need to move under the lids to erase and eliminate 50% of that old, outdated belief. And because you created it, you will know how to replace it with something better. And then you just let them go to town. And if you see their eyes start to slow, you just go, that's right, just move those eyes left and right. And now that I know IEMT, I'm a practitioner myself, it's like, oh, this makes so much more sense. But in the beginning, as I'm saying, I'm just improvising, using my imagination, little bits and pieces of what I've learned. And so then I will give the client the suggestion, subconscious, you know better than Michael or myself how long this needs to take. So take your time, do it thoroughly. You created it, you will know how to eliminate it and replace it. And when you've gotten to that place where you intuitively feel that 50%, just one training wheel is coming off, The eyes will slow or stop. You'll take a deep breath, and that yes response will let me know. So then I'm getting 3 different activation cues. I'm seeing that the eyes are slowing down. So whether they're directly following me or the subconscious is doing it or both is happening, I'm getting feedback and information. Then you get the breath. That tells me that their autonomic nervous system has said, and that's when I always say, that's right. Doesn't that feel better? So if we're watching for pulse changes, you know, I'm so fortunate I have this mirror or this window next to my chair, because if I can watch for pulse changes in their temple or the side of their neck, and I'm watching for those breathing changes, brilliant, excellent, amazing. You're doing great. You know, we cannot give enough positive reinforcement. Think about these poor people that come to our life and people are shitting on them every day. Their spouse, their child, their boss, their neighbor. And here they have this person and they're in the most vulnerable place that they could be, telling them that they're brilliant and amazing and excellent. They're going to walk out of your office going, I definitely want to come back and see this lady. She makes me feel good. And that's what we're here to do, right? We're here to build people's confidence. My core mission, because I had such low self-concept and such low self-confidence, and you wouldn't have recognized it because I had a big defense against the opposite. It came off as this false bravado, but inside I was just, you know, shitting bricks. And once I dealt with my own issues and felt my own self-empowerment, becoming a hypnotist, I'm like, this is what everybody needs to feel. And that's not to say that we don't have these moments, you know, where you're going to have doubt, but we know how to deal with them better because our core sense of self is really strong. The foundation of that I love and accept myself, even when I'm not doing my best or don't know the answer, it's okay. And so the idea is giving the client feedback, really positive feedback, I think is wonderful. So I think I saw something pop up on the chat.
Quick question for you. You said that you use music on the left side. What do you use? Certain kind or tone? What is it you use?
My speaker. So I asked the client in the beginning, is music fine in the background? Because I always have music playing and I just play Spotify. There's this ambient, relaxing music that goes through just really cool stuff. And most people are fine with music. Some people say, no, it's distracting. So I turn it off. So if I'm using music, I'm so glad you asked this question because this is kind of like my favorite part. There's an inner performer inside of me that likes to come out in hypnosis sometimes. And I love music. And I understand that music is not everybody's bag, and that's okay. I respect this. But when I do use music and the client is up for it, once we have changed and we have this new belief system, and we layer it, there's a way that I use it to compound it and loop it and double embed it and triple embed it. Once we've got it activated at 100%, or if we've gotten rid of 50% of the old belief and we've created a new belief, we've got the new belief up at 50% so that we know that there's more balance in this person's life. Then I will do what we do in hypnosis is we have them future pace. And if you could put up on a screen in front of you this new movie of the mind, and again, we all bring in all the submodalities, we do all the stuff we know how to do as hypnotists. Now, you've written this new story for yourself. Yourself as the lead, you're the director, you're that triple threat out of Hollywood, right? So in a moment, this is nothing I can do for you. This is you deciding if you want to step into this movie. But, you know, before you step into it, just wait, because I like to bring this, wait, what? And I don't do this every time, but sometimes but before you do, you know, every good movie has a soundtrack, doesn't it? And within that soundtrack, there's always a song or two that when you hear it today, it takes you right back to the movie. What'd you say, Karen? Instant regression. And sometimes when you see that the movie's playing, the song comes up. So let your subconscious mind bring a song up that really embodies this new story, this new belief, this new way of being in the world. You know, like riding your bicycle without training wheels, your little legs and feet pumping, everything is free, you're feeling great. And if they can't come up with a song, then I say, you know what, it might be a song that just lets you know that every little thing's going to be all right. Or maybe without that pain, you can see clearly now. Or, oh, what a feeling it is to have this, you know, because I have this little Spotify list of like, or maybe it's just happy, or I love the is somewhere over the rainbow, what a beautiful, you know, world and whatever. So when they bring the song up, I come back over from my chair and I go, that's right. And I've got my, you know, that song, that movie that you're playing, just let that song play in your head. And I find the song and then I bring it over and I put it in their left ear and let it play. And then I will go in front of them. Maybe I'll put it behind them. I'll kind of, play with it if I feel like it. But the idea is really anchoring it in that ear that processes sound through music. And that becomes part of their therapeutic reinforcement. Because some people say, well, what kind of homework can I have? And I'm like, well, go play that song. Maybe you should make your own special playlist for this movie that's your own soundtrack. So that's the answer to how I use music. But I don't do it respectfully for everyone. But when I do, people love it. They love it.
Props to Jen Pett for that question. And if you have any other questions, put them in the chat room. We'll get to it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No, you go for it.
No, I was gonna throw in a question, but if you're ready to go on to something
No, please
else,
give me a question.
when you you're making me nostalgic, I have to say, for actually person with clients, because I forget how fun that actually was. I guess that's why my head went to, record some things and play with these with these gimmicks with this, on recordings, because it's another way to do that. But it was very fun to have a person in person and anchor things and do the sound things and do the very creative things. You're just extraordinarily creative, Gila. And I think that's one of the things that makes hypnosis so wonderful, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And I want to be mindful of the fact that there are people that are only doing hypnosis online, and this transfers online to a large degree. When I do an arm venting with a client, or when I should say, when I'm wanting to anchor it in physically, I say, now you're going to bring all your attention to that left arm and hand, make a fist, make it really tight. And we're going to have you slowly, we're going to anchor this change in. We're going to bring that left arm up. I'm going to count just, from 1 to 3, we're going to bring that feeling up. We're going to bring it, build it 2, double it 3 times, 10 times at 3. There it is. And then in a moment, I'm going to count from 3 to 0. And you're just going to drop that arm and let that feeling sink in deeper. 3, 2, 1, 0. There it goes. And then the arm goes down. It either drops or it slowly goes down. So you all are creative. You can definitely use this online. Obviously, we can't speak in different ears, but we're still giving the suggestion that, if we're going to station that logical, intellectual thinking mind to the right. So when you notice that sense of feeling over, the head's going to slowly turn to the right. And when the subconscious mind is fine with the thinking mind staying all the way over on the right, there it is. Okay, now the eyes will move under the lids back to the center. So you're just using more direction like you would if you were on a telephone call or guiding somebody. Tracy, I'm curious. You have trained in this. I would love some of your feedback if you wouldn't mind sharing. Am I putting you on the spot? Your mic is off still.
Unmute, Tracy.
I can relate. I had one client to stop smoking, and this was, I think, a couple of years ago, and she was I just had trepidation, but I knew she was not going to be easy. She said she had been to hypnotists before. Hypnosis doesn't work on her, blah, okay. And you're coming to me and I'm like pretty new, so I'm like, well, let me try this. She was amazed by it. And that's what really boosted me to be more interested in working with that, because I think I gave her a glimmer of hope. She ultimately decided not to quit smoking and not to pursue anymore. But I think it really threw her for a loop on that first time. And I think she just really didn't want to quit smoking. So she didn't come back. But that's the most I don't know, I guess that the most impressionable, and the one that made the most impression on me was that woman.
Yeah.
Was so resistant.
And you bring up
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
She brings up a really good point. I try to refer smokers out anymore now. And they were great when I was a new hypnotist, because they can be tough. And sometimes it's a one-shot deal. They're done smoking the first time and I never see them again. But more often than not, it's, it takes a little bit longer. And what I love about this is it leverages the notion that, especially if someone comes in and says, well, I don't think I can be hypnotized, or I don't know if this is, or we are actively engaging that logical, intellectual thinking mind as part of the resource, as part of the progress. Because when I'm going back and forth and calibrating, once I've made any measure of change from the subconscious mind, I will go back over and I say, now I'm going to move over to that thinking mind, logic, reason, intellect, superior judgment, and thinking mind. I'm going to have you just connect to me again, and I either snap or touch them. And I ask, now thinking mind, can you please tell me what's going to be different for Michael now that XYZ? Logically, intellectually, what's going to be different for him? Oh, well, he's going to have more energy. Oh, well, he's going to be calmer. And so often that thinking mind is talking in the third person, which kind of throws them for a loop. And sometimes they're not aware of it, but I love it when that thinking mind is talking in the third person, because what does that tell you? That tells you they're deep in it. They're deep in it. And so what I'm also doing, and as I'm taking notes, I'm taking notes about what this change is going to be, because that's going to be my ending, embedded, looping pattern. So when I'm, and what's going to be different, and how is this going to benefit his relationship, and how is this going to make him better at his job, and how is this going to help him XYZ? And so I'm writing it all down. And then I will say, thinking mind, I know that you're all about value. Subconscious over there is all about protection, but you are all about value. Now, thinking mind, when Michael leaves today, are you willing to logically, intellectually accept the changes subconscious mind has made today because of the value this brings to Michael? And I've done a shit ton of these sessions, and maybe once did I get a no. And Tracy, that was the person that's like, you know what, maybe I really don't want to change, because sometimes people come thinking they want to, but maybe they don't. And so what you're doing is you're leveraging that. And that's right. So we're going to lock in that change right there. We're just going to lock it in. And then I'm going to move back over to the other side and just continue the process. So, yes.
Yeah, she just wanted to do a certain percentage. I think it was like 40% or something. And I think that actually the effectiveness of the session kind of scared her a little bit. And then
came out hot and fast, Tracy. Came out hot and fast.
So, but yeah, it was effective. And I think she just wasn't as ready for a change as she thought she was. So that's okay.
Yeah.
Sheila,
But look at you, right out of the gate, you were like, I'm going to do this.
Yeah, Gila, earlier you were doing a thing with hand levitation, and Karen Ross's hand went up ever so slowly, and she's been holding it in the air for some while now. So I bet she has a question for you.
Oh, yes.
My digital hand. Just wondering if you ever work with children, and if you do, how you modify this approach to working with children.
Well, that's a brilliant question, because I've never used it on children. But I'm sure that with your expertise, do you work with children a lot?
Well, they seem to be coming to me, even though I haven't sought them out. But obviously the parents. Yeah. And yeah, I'm working with a 9-year-old right now who has been diagnosed with ADHD, and he's difficult to even pin down to a conversation. But I'm looking for different creative ways to work with him.
What's coming to mind for me is I would get a big, I don't work with children a lot, but it depends on the child and the issue, but I have a really big pad of paper and pencils. I would have them draw their head as who they are, and then have them draw their a representation of their emotional self on one side, and then a representation of their kind of thinking self. And so you might say, this is the part of your brain that adds 1 + 1 is 2 and 2 + 2 is 4. And this is the part of the brain that feels good when you get a cookie and a warm glass of milk or whatever, so that you're giving that embedded suggestion, and then just have them use their eyes to look at the side of the paper. If you want them to activate that right brain, you're going to have them look to the left. Now, over here to the left, you're going to draw that part of you that is the emotional part of you. So does that help at all? The idea of
it does. Yeah.
And then you could, what's the core belief? You could have them draw the core belief right in the forehead. What does that look like? And then take it out. Maybe they erase 50% of it, change it. So that's what I would do. That's a great idea. Thank you. I've never thought to use that.
That is a great idea.
I like that. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Sure.
We had another question in the chat too. How do you introduce touching to a client that is in person? I've been taught not to touch, not interested, but I'm interested.
Okay.
You
Oh, you're
physically
interested in touch. That's a whole nother conversation for hypnosis, isn't it? Okay, so what we were taught just to ask permission. And so I will always say, you know, I never need to touch you with hypnosis, but with your permission, I will only touch your shoulders, arms, hands, and the crown of your forehead because it's an anchoring technique. That's how I introduce it. And again, handwriting will tell us if a person is very reserved, or you're going to be able to assess if your client is ASD on the autism spectrum disorder, they're probably not going to want to be touched. So we want to be respectful of that. Sometimes you get these people that come in and they're just really, you can tell they're really animated, and you know they're probably a physical, they're probably going to be fine with you touching them. But I just ask. Consent is key. Any other questions?
Just for FYI, if you have personal business insurance and that's important to you, just check what your personal business insurance will cover, because there are some personal business insurance companies that won't cover touch. Just FYI. I'm not terribly afraid of anything like that, but I'm just saying if that is a concern for you, that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Gila, I'd like to know if the I mean you referred to the work that you do as a protocol. So with that said, is this something that you do repeatedly, or is it a one-shot deal, or how does this, or do you have like well, I think I heard it before, because there's some things you were working with percentages and things like that, so you might do one and then another session, but yeah, just help me unpack that a little.
Yeah, so it's essentially depending upon how far they want to go with it. I've had people that only want to go 10% for one session. So when we come back, we assess. So where are we with this? And some people that want to knock it out 100%. And you'll get those like, yeah, I know what we're doing. Can we just speed this up? Sure, let's just speed it up if you're ready to do that. But what I always say at the end of the session, if somebody has only gone incrementally, so let's say they've only gone 20%, they've really identified with this part of them, and maybe they're not ready to fully let it go more. I will always say, and you might find subconscious mind that as you become more comfortable feeling safe and free with 20% less of that issue, you may find that between now and when Michael and I work again, that you feel safe letting go of more of that. And when Michael and I meet again, I'm going to look forward to hearing the ways in which you've continued to change that belief system and replace it with the one that you created today. Because that's where they get the new belief. Once we create the opposite in that movie of the mind, that becomes a replacement belief. We get those notes. And that just becomes the reinforcing pattern at the end as well.
Another question just showed up in the chat room. Could you please go back to explain which side of the client you were on as you were speaking to them in a paternal manner, and which side for the maternal?
I went over to, actually at the time, I believe that I either stood up or I was on the left. But once I got that, because I was in my old office, once I got them to lock on, then I went around to the right side of them and spoke into their right ear, and I stayed very paternal. I figured logic, reason, intellect, and judgment. I'm going to talk some straight talk here. But the emotional part of them, I'm going to assume, was the part that was really had some trepidation. And that's when I got into my little softer voice. Does that answer the question, I hope?
I think so.
It's not rocket science. You can't mess it up. You know, if you do one or the other, just, oh yeah, that's right. And go back and we can't be too rigid with these things, or rigid with ourselves, can we?
You know, that's a really good point, because the fluidity that you are talking about indicates that more than being married to the technique or the rule or the step or wherever you are in the protocol, you are married to the feedback that you get.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever feedback they give you, you're going to take that feedback and go with it, roll with it.
And absolutely. And honestly, I've had people where we're doing this and they abreact in a way that is just, we need to address this now. And I'll completely leave it and switch into something different. Switch into some other thing, and just, I'm not married to it. This is like what we're going to use, because from what you've told me, maybe this is the second or third session and you're just, sounds to me like there's a residual core belief we need to address. But even so, if something comes up, and this is incidentally when Jessica revealed to me that she had had multiple abortions and she did not disclose that. And so there was a lot of things there was a lot of pain and trauma that needed to come up, and the trauma behind why she needed those. So we can see now where the medical issue came from, can't we? She can see it happening to someone else, but she can't have it happening to her. And so, that's a really good point, that sometimes when we need to, we have to step out of what we think we should be doing into what the client really needs. So, and then conversely, I can be working in a completely different approach. And I'll say, it sounds to me like you've got a belief in there. Can you just roll the eyes and lock onto that belief? Just clock. And then I'll just have them move the eyes. So this is why I say it's a lot in a standalone process, or you can piecemeal it out once you get familiar with it.
And that's the art of hypnosis.
It is. I'm just so excited there's so many of you that came to play, because I find this playful.
So we are just about out of time. We're getting to that point. I just want to throw this out. If somebody's got a question, please unmute yourself right now and ask that question, because we are just about out of time. All right, Michael.
Speak now or forever hold your peace.
I know you were about to say something and I jumped in offering questions.
No, not at all. I think I was going to say something very similar because it is that time. The time goes by so quickly, and especially when we have great guests like Gila Zak. And Karen, I would like you to let everybody know, we're going to, by the way, Gila, hang on there for a second, because we're going to come back to you in just a moment. But you might also let them know, what are we doing next month?
Next month, we'll have Beryl Comer with us. She's coming to us all the way from Spain, and she will tell us why she calls herself an emotional intelligence specialist, and how she uses that in hypnosis with children, how she uses it with all sorts of things. Dementia. She's got a specialty in dementia. So this is going to be fascinating, and Beryl doesn't do a lot of these, so we're very, very lucky to have her. It's going to be in the middle of the night for her. So please show up. Let's show her a lot of respect and get some great learning out of it. Gila,
for laughing.
I'm sorry, Michael.
Forgive me for laughing, but when you said that Beryl has a specialty in dementia, I think what she meant was that Beryl is a really sharp lady, and she's got some lovely stuff to share with us.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So
emotional intelligence stuff is great for coaches and all sorts of things. So tell your friends, it's going to be great. Yep. And so was this tonight, Gila. This was fabulous. I'm so glad you shared such valuable information with us.
Well, thank you. If any of you, I'm really sensitive to being added to email lists. If any of you are in any way interested on upcoming trainings for this or anything else, then you can just contact me through my website, the contact form, and just say, please add me to your list. I don't send out newsletters. I don't do any of that. You would only get an email from me if I'm going to be teaching this in person or online somewhere. So
that's www.quantumwavehypnotherapy.com. or email quantumg@sbcglobal.net. And see,
I'm not Jason Lynette. I don't send out an email once a week or every 2 days. Right. I like to tease him on that. It's like, dude, and I know
we've all got your email address now.
That's right.
All right. Well, I think that puts us in at the magic hour here. So in a moment, I guess no further announcements other than HypnoExpo this coming weekend. So everybody, those of you who are going to be there, we'll look forward to seeing you there. And those that you aren't, well, nah.
We will see you back here next month, though.
We're going to have a great time. So now, everybody, we would like you to do as we are wont to, that is, open up all of your microphones so that everybody can say goodnight to Gila and let her know how much we appreciate that she was here as we say our goodbyes.
Thank you, Gila.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gila.
Thank you, Gila.
Excellent.
Do we get a screenshot?
Thank you so much.
Do we get a screenshot?
Thank you.
Oh, don't sign off yet, Michael. Let me get I got one.
Excellent. And thank you all. Time is really the one thing that we can't make more of or get back. So I really appreciate, it's precious that you were here, especially you, Joseph. You can go to bed now.
The replay will be posted tomorrow by about noon at the virtual chapter Facebook group, virtual chapter YouTube channel, and on the IACT IMDHA website as well. So plenty of opportunity to see it again. Good night, everybody.
Okay. Good
night.
night. Thank you all.
Night.
Good night.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.